Hi, this is Chronicle Stories TV. Be sure to like, subscribe, and don't forget to comment where you're listening from. Lena Hughes rolled her suitcase down the cracked gravel road, her boots crunching softly as the shadow of Hillcrest Forest loomed ahead. Elm Ridge was a sleepy place, too sleepy, almost forgotten by time, but that's what made it perfect for her podcast, Whispers Unheard. She was here for the local legend. A tree hidden deep behind the ruins of the old Hillcrest boarding school. Locals called it the Whisper Tree. Rumor had it, if you stood near it too long, it spoke to you. Not with a voice, but with something else. A pull. A suggestion. A silence that told you exactly what it wanted. Lena didn't believe in curses or ghosts. She believed in atmosphere, in fear of the unknown, and the way it pulled listeners in. Her show had grown popular by turning small-town myths into gripping stories. This trip was supposed to be another eerie but explainable tale. Just a tree, she murmured, eyes scanning the horizon where thick trees rose like ancient sentinels. Just a dead old tree. The sun was setting by the time she reached the trailhead. Her motel was only 10 minutes behind her, but the air already felt different. Thicker. Still. She pulled out her recorder. October 12th, she said softly, her voice steady. Arrived in Elm Ridge this afternoon. Locals avoided eye contact when I mentioned Hillcrest. One woman, maybe in her 60s, whispered, "You don't want to go there, miss. You don't find that tree. It finds you." She laughed gently under her breath, but her hand had tightened around the mic. The trail was narrow and overgrown. As she walked, the forest seemed to swallow her. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. Birds stopped chirping. The wind didn't reach her here. Then she saw it. The tree stood alone in a clearing like it had been planted there by accident. Tall, pale, and brittle-looking. Its bark was bone-white and smooth. Wrong. Trees weren't supposed to be smooth. A broken swing hung from one limb, the rope frayed and dark with age. Lena lifted her camera. Click. The swing moved, once. Just a gentle sway. She blinked. There was no breeze. The camera's click echoed louder than it should have, as though the forest had leaned in to listen. Lena lowered it slowly. Her breath caught in her throat. The swing, still creaking gently, stopped midair. It didn't settle, it froze. Like time had held it there for just a moment too long. She took a step back. Her recorder was still on. She raised it again with a slightly shaking hand. Whisper Tree located. Visual confirms the local descriptions. Swing present. No signs of wind, but motion detected. Possible wildlife interference, or just nerves. She exhaled slowly and walked a wide arc around the tree. The forest around it was strange, perfectly quiet, yes, but also too undisturbed. No moss. No mushrooms. Not even insects. Like life simply avoided the place. On a whim, she approached the base of the tree and ran her fingers across the bark. It wasn't rough or cracked. It was unnervingly smooth, like marble. And cold. She leaned in to examine it closer, and for a moment, just a flicker, she heard something. A breath. Not hers. She froze, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. "Hello," she whispered. No answer. She stepped back fast, heart ticking faster in her chest. Could have been the wind, she mumbled, even though she knew it wasn't. Still, she wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. She set up her tripod and aimed the lens toward the tree. As the automatic timer beeped softly, she turned and faced it, letting the camera catch her silhouette beside the infamous Whisper Tree. Click. The shutter went off. The moment the flash faded, the forest seemed darker. Colder. Like something had noticed her. Lena returned to the motel just after dusk. The wind had picked up along the way, rustling dead leaves like whispering mouths. As she walked, she kept looking back. She didn't know why, she hadn't seen anything. But that feeling, that pull in the back of her mind, it hadn't stopped. Inside, the room was modest, creaky floorboards, mustard-colored wallpaper, and a bed that smelled faintly of old cedar. She plugged in her camera, opened her laptop, and waited. The first batch of photos loaded. Forest. Bark. Swing. Then, the one with her in it. She stared. Behind her, just at the edge of the tree's shadow, was a shape. Tall. Thin. Wrong. Her face tightened. No way. She zoomed in. The figure was blurred, almost intentional, like the camera refused to focus on it. But she could make out the outline of long arms, unnaturally long. And what should have been a face, wasn't. Just smooth flesh, featureless. Then her laptop froze. A buzz crackled from her recorder, still running. She reached for it, puzzled. Instead of her voice, or ambient forest noise, it played something else. Clicks. And under that, something wet. Like heavy breathing filtered through static. She stopped the playback. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She opened the message. Don't look for him. She blinked. A chill ran through her fingers. She went to screenshot it, but before her thumb touched the screen, the message vanished. Lena stared at the screen for a long time. The room felt smaller now. The air thicker. Outside the window, the wind had stopped again. And she was sure, absolutely sure, she could see a shape at the tree line across the parking lot. Still. Watching. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat in the motel's stiff armchair with her laptop open, the glow of the paused photo bathing her face in cold light. That thing in the picture, tall, faceless, and watching, wasn't a trick of the camera. She felt it. The same presence she sensed near the whisper tree, now immortalized in her photo. She tried researching similar sightings, urban legends, cryptids, folklore. One word kept popping up, again and again. Slenderman. But this thing, it didn't match everything. It was older. Less digital myth, more ancient sickness. Sleep came in fragments, short, shallow bursts broken by creaking floors and phantom knocks. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw that blank face and those arms, reaching through trees that whispered her name. At dawn, she walked to the local library. The building was old, a relic of early Elmridge, with tall windows and that smell of worn paper and forgotten things. Inside, the librarian barely looked up. "I'm looking for local records," Lena said. "Missing persons. Anything near Hillcrest boarding school." The librarian hesitated, then pointed to a dusty wooden cabinet near the back. Hours passed. Lena flipped through files yellowed by time. Then she found it. Emily Darrow. Missing since 1997. The file was thin. No witnesses. No suspects. She was last seen near the forest on a school trip. Taped inside the folder was a photocopy of a drawing. Lena's throat went dry. It was a pencil sketch of the whisper tree. Next to it, a figure. Featureless face. Long limbs. Tall as the branches. Scrawled in a child's shaky handwriting beneath it. "He makes you forget." Lena rushed back to her motel room, heart thudding in her chest. The drawing in the folder, Emily's drawing, was too familiar. Too accurate. It wasn't something a child could have made up without seeing him. That tree. That shape. That face, or the lack of one. She dropped her backpack on the floor and checked her laptop. The image was still there. That shape behind her. She leaned in, heart hammering. There, barely visible among the branches, were those fingers. She sat back. Her hands were trembling now. A quiet knock broke the silence. She turned sharply. Another knock. Softer. Slower. She approached the door, barely breathing. "Hello," she called. Silence. She hesitated, then opened it. No one. But something had been slid under the door. A photograph. She picked it up slowly, her fingers trembling. It was a print, old, like it had been developed on film, not digital. A little grainy. It showed her, standing in front of the whisper tree. But she hadn't taken it. And no one else had been there. And in the background, in the shadows near the base of the tree, the figure was clearer now. Long arms. Blank face. And its head was tilted slightly. Almost like it was listening. She dropped the photo and stumbled back, mouth dry. Her phone buzzed again. "You saw him. Now he sees you." She backed into the corner of the room, eyes darting to the window. There was nothing outside. But she felt him. Closer now. Morning in Elmridge didn't feel like morning anywhere else. The sun rose behind thick gray clouds, casting everything in a pale, washed-out light. Lena walked the town slowly, camera tucked away, her recorder still running in her coat pocket. She needed answers. Clues. Something. Most of the townsfolk wouldn't talk. Doors stayed closed. Windows twitched as she passed. Eventually, she found someone, an older man seated on a bench outside the shuttered post office. His eyes were clouded, but not from blindness. It was something else. A far-off look. Like he'd seen too much and remembered too little. "You're the one asking about the tree," he said without looking at her. Lena paused. "Yes. I saw it." She hesitated. "Do you know what it is?" The man nodded slowly. "Not what?" "Who?" Lena sat beside him. "Who, then?" He took a breath. "We used to call him the silent guest. My granddad called him the men behind the trees." "Slender men," she offered. He shook his head. "That's the internet's name. Ours is older. Realer." Lena leaned in. "What does he do?" The man scratched his chin. "He watches. Waits. Makes you forget pieces of yourself. First your time, then your name, then your face. Leaves the rest behind." She swallowed. "How do you stop him?" He looked at her for the first time, ice cold. "You don't." Then he stood up and walked away without another word. The day blurred. Lena tried retracing her steps, talking to anyone who would listen, recording her thoughts into the mic like a tether to reality. But the hours slipped strangely. 1 minute it was noon. Then suddenly, 4:30. She checked her phone, for missed calls from an unknown number. She didn't remember it ringing. When she got back to the motel, the clerk handed her a note. Folded paper. No envelope. "It's not just in the woods. It follows. The tree is his gate, but the seeing is the invitation." She stared at the handwriting. Shaky. Uneven. The kind you might write if your hand wasn't quite yours anymore. Her camera bag was sitting on the bed where she'd left it. The zipper was open. Inside, every photo she'd taken was gone, except one. The photo of her by the tree. But it was different now. She stared at it under the room's flickering lamp. The figure behind her wasn't in the background anymore. It was closer. Just behind her shoulder. And this time, she was no longer looking at the camera. She was looking at him. That night, Lena couldn't bring herself to turn off the lights. The motel room glowed with a dim orange lamp, casting long, strange shadows across the walls. Her laptop sat open on the desk, the haunted photo enlarged to full screen. She studied her own eyes in the image, her frozen expression. The way her shoulders leaned ever so slightly toward the figure behind her. She didn't remember that moment. Her audio recorder lay beside her, still running. She picked it up and pressed play, half hoping to hear her own voice, something normal. Instead, she heard static. Not loud, soft, like a whisper layered beneath fog. And underneath that, Lena's voice. But it wasn't from any recording she remembered making. He's in the space between the moments. He's the pause when no one speaks. The breath before the scream. She dropped the recorder. That wasn't a quote. That wasn't part of her notes. She'd never said those words. Then the static changed. Sharper. Faster. Like someone walking quickly across gravel. She pressed stop. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message this time, just an image. It was a screenshot of her motel window. Taken from outside. The curtain was open in the picture. She glanced toward the real window. The curtain was closed. She had to go back. Whatever was happening, whoever this figure was, it started at Hillcrest. And maybe, just maybe, it could end there too. The next morning was bleak. Fog hugged the ground like a living thing, thick and reluctant to lift. Lena drove through it slowly, her car groaning as she followed the cracked road toward the ruins of Hillcrest boarding school. The building sat hunched beneath a canopy of ash trees, crumbling and forgotten. Its once red brick had faded to dull gray, windows shattered or boarded over. Vines strangled the outer walls. She stepped from the car and switched on her mic. Returning to the Hillcrest ruins, she said softly. Over 20 years ago, a girl named Emily vanished near here. Her drawing suggested something followed her. Or, something waited. The front doors were heavy, splintered. She stepped through cautiously. Dust clung to the air like smoke. The hallways were caved in, the floor warped from water damage. Echoes responded to her every move, creaks, drips, and occasional cracking from above. In what remained of the main hallway, she saw it, an old bulletin board still clinging to the wall. Faded photographs of smiling children. One of them had a face that had been scratched out. No other faces were touched. Just that one. And written faintly beneath it, in the same handwriting from the note. He took her face because she saw him. Lena stepped back. The air felt tight, like it was being held by something unseen. She wasn't alone in the building. She knew it. Lena wandered deeper into the ruins of Hillcrest, the recorder steady in her hand, its red light blinking. Inside the school now, she whispered, her voice barely rising over the echo of her footsteps. Air is stale. Cold. Structures barely holding. I'm searching for any records, journals, notes, evidence left behind. The hallways branched in every direction, doors hanging from rusted hinges like broken teeth. She paused at one of them. A placard above it read Room 2B. A classroom. She pushed the door open with her boot. The room looked like time had paused, then decayed. Desks were toppled, old chalk dust coated the floor, and a cracked blackboard still held faded writing. Nature Walk, Friday, bring your boots. A date was scribbled beside it. April 11, 1997. The day Emily Darrow disappeared. Lena's breath caught. On the floor near the teacher's desk was something strange, scattered pages, brittle with age. She crouched down carefully and picked one up. A journal entry in a child's hand. He doesn't speak. But I hear him when I blink too long. He doesn't have a name. But he knows mine. He makes the trees move when no one's watching. More pages lay nearby, but one had been nailed to the underside of a desk, hidden from view. Lena gently pulled it free. In thick pencil strokes, a single phrase repeated. He stands when you're still. He walks when you turn away. Her hand trembled. Something creaked loudly in the hallway. She stood up slowly, heart racing. She wasn't alone. Lena crept into the hallway, recorder still running, breath shallow. The sound had come from the far end, near what looked like an old supply closet. The air here was heavier now, as though the school had drawn a breath and held it. She raised her voice just slightly. If someone's there, I'm just documenting. I don't want trouble. Silence. Then, 3 soft knocks. Not from ahead. Behind her. She turned. No one. The door she had just exited from swung open slightly, creaking low and long. She was shaking now. She backed away until her shoulder hit a door she hadn't noticed before, tall, narrow, with a metal plaque that read records. She tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, a set of cabinets loomed along the far wall. Files, moldy and warped with age, but still intact. She pulled one open and began to sort through the folders. Student names. Incident reports. Then she found it, Darrow, Emily. It was thinner than she expected. Inside, 1 page. A referral slip. Her teacher had written. Emily continues to speak to someone we cannot see. Says he tells her secrets. She stands outside the window for long periods. When asked what she's doing, she says, listening to the quiet one. The back of the page had something scrawled in childlike, frantic handwriting. A countdown. 99. 98. 97. It stopped at 1. Under it, a sentence. He's in the last second. Lena stood in the records room for what felt like hours, though her watch told a different story. The seconds ticked forward, slow and heavy. She left the file in the drawer and stepped back into the hallway. It was quieter now. The kind of quiet that pressed on your ears. Dust drifted lazily through beams of gray light slicing in through broken windows. As she moved, she passed a rusted wall mirror, cracked down the center like lightning had struck it long ago. Out of habit, she glanced at her reflection. Then stopped. She leaned in, heart thudding. She was in the mirror, but something was wrong. Her reflection wasn't moving in sync. It stood straighter, eyes darker, face slightly off. A flicker behind her. Tall. Thin. She spun around. Nothing. But in the mirror, the tall figure remained. Unmoving. Watching. Then her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. She stepped away quickly. The mirror darkened, like fog creeping over its surface. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the same unknown number. The reflection remembers when you forget. She locked the phone and backed into the hall. Her own face no longer felt familiar. The hallway narrowed the deeper she walked, branching toward what remained of the dormitory wing. Her boots clicked faintly across rotted wood. Above her, the roof groaned. Lena found what used to be a student bedroom. Peeling paint, bunk beds, shattered glass. A small desk sat in the corner, drawers open and empty. She swept her flashlight slowly across the room. Then she saw it, an outline beneath the floorboards. Like something was hidden under a loose plank. She knelt and pried it up with the edge of her tripod. A small leather-bound journal, damp with age. Inside, in small neat handwriting, Emily Darrow. She flipped through the entries. He doesn't always show himself. Sometimes it's just a sound. A hum. A shape in the trees. But he watches every time I close my eyes. They said I imagined him. But I saw him behind Miss Carter when she yelled at me. He was reaching toward her neck. I thought if I gave him my drawings, he'd leave. But he only smiled. Not with a mouth. With the space where one should be. Lena stopped at a drawing. Not of the figure. Of a girl. Older. It looked like Lena. She stared in disbelief. And beneath it, written in trembling ink. She'll come looking. He'll be waiting. Lena clutched the journal to her chest, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Emily had drawn her. Not someone who looked like her. The shape of her eyes, the split in her eyebrow, the same Jack. He had erased large chunks of the writing, leaving ghostly lines behind. Then she found one word that chilled her deeper than anything else so far. Lena. Written carefully. Not rushed or accidental. Just one page, her name alone in the center. She backed away from the desk slowly, her grip tightening on the journal. Then she heard it. A low clicking sound. Like a camera shutter. But it wasn't hers. She turned. No one. Then another click, this time closer. Near the hallway. Her feet moved on their own, retracing steps through the dormitory. The clicking echoed now, repeating steadily. Almost rhythmic. Like footsteps in code. She passed a wall with old photos still clinging to the plaster. Group pictures. Smiling faces. But every single child's face had been scratched out. Neatly. Deliberately. All except one. A tall boy in the corner. Not smiling. His face was just gone. Wiped clean, as though it had never existed. The caption below read, Class of '92. We will never forget. But someone had crossed out never and written, we already did. Lena left the dormitory wing, the journal wrapped in a towel and tucked under her arm. She didn't know why, but she felt like he couldn't touch it if it stayed out of sight. Back in the main hallway, the light had shifted. The sky outside looked darker, even though it was only mid-afternoon. She walked past the old cafeteria, noticing a mural along one wall. It had once been colorful, hand-painted by students, a scene of the forest behind the school. Now it looked faded and strange. The trees were all black. The swing on the whisper tree was still visible in the center. But something had been added in charcoal over the paint, crude lines forming a tall, faceless figure. Barely visible unless you stood just right. She snapped a photo with her phone. The moment the shutter went off, she heard something fall behind her. A picture frame. She turned. One of the photos from earlier had fallen. Face down. She picked it up and turned it over. It was blank. No image. Just a white surface, warped and yellowed. Then she saw it, a word burned faintly into the back of the frame, so soft it could have been missed. Closer. And beneath it. He lives in forgotten things. Lena backed away slowly. She realized something horrifying. She hadn't heard a single bird since coming back to the school. No birds. No bugs. No wind. Only him. Lena stood before a door she hadn't seen before. Tucked between collapsed walls and fallen beams near the school's old gymnasium, it was small, iron, bolted at one time, now rusted open just enough for her to squeeze through. It led to a stairwell. Concrete steps spiraled down into a basement, damp and suffocating. As she descended, her flashlight flickered against walls stained with water damage and soot. Old pipes groaned above her like something breathing. She spoke softly into her recorder. Entering substructure. Not on original floor plan. Possibly an old maintenance tunnel or shelter. Feels older than the rest of the school. The air changed. Thick. Metallic. Her flashlight caught glimpses of old lockers, their doors warped and open like gaping mouths. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, scratches more than carvings. Circles. Long lines. Eyes with no pupils. At the end of the corridor was a heavy wooden door. No knob, just a ring handle. She hesitated. The last time she'd felt this kind of silence, she'd been standing at the whisper tree. Her hand reached out slowly. The door creaked open. A small room. Concrete. One chair. A table. And on the table, another photo. She picked it up. It was her. Sleeping. In her motel bed. Lena backed into the hallway, hand pressed tight over her mouth. The photograph trembled in her fingers. She hadn't seen anyone that night. Had locked the door. Hadn't left the window open. She looked at the edges of the picture, old, too. Developed. Like film from a different time. How long had someone been watching her? And more importantly, what had been watching her? She slipped the photo into her jacket and raised her recorder. Photo found in underground room. Image of me sleeping, unexplainable. No evidence of entry. Starting to believe he doesn't move the way we do. Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned to leave but stopped. A sound. Not loud, but clear. Familiar. A child's voice. Just ahead, down the next hallway. Whispering. She followed cautiously, her light catching a trail of footprints, small, bare, damp, leading away from the room and around the corner. She followed them until they stopped at a wall. Not a door. A solid, unbroken wall. And scrawled on it in smudged charcoal, as though drawn by a child's hand. If you hear her, you're already too late. Lena backed away slowly, breathing uneven. From the shadows, the whisper came again. A girl's voice. Soft. Calling her name. Lena. But it was coming from behind her. She turned, heart pounding. Nothing. Just a hallway that now looked longer than it had a moment ago. Too long. Endless. Lena stared down the endless hallway, heart hammering in her chest. The dim light of her flashlight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. Each step echoed louder than the last, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The walls, once cracked and peeling, now seemed smooth and unblemished, like they had never been touched by time or decay. The air was thick with a cold dampness, and with every breath, Lena felt as if the space itself was closing in on her. Her recorder trembled slightly in her hand. She whispered, "This hallway, it's changing. Like it's alive." She stepped forward, every instinct screaming to turn back, but something pulled her deeper. The whispering grew louder, clearer. Lena. She swallowed hard and continued, her footsteps slower now, wary. The whisper shifted into words, soft but unmistakable. "Come to me." Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Panic rose, but Lena forced herself to stay calm. Her eyes adjusted slowly, and in the blackness, she saw it, a faint silhouette at the far end of the hall. Tall. Thin. Faceless. It didn't move, but she felt its presence like a cold hand on her spine. Lena's breath hitched. She whispered into the recorder, "He's here." The silhouette didn't step forward. It didn't blink. It just stood, watching. Then, from the shadows, a soft noise emerged, a click, like a camera shutter. Lena's mind flashed back to the photos, the whispers, the warnings. This wasn't just a shadow or a trick of the mind. This was the silent guest. The voice whispered again, clearer this time. "You saw me. Now you belong." Lena felt the cold seep into her bones. The walls seemed to pulse, the hallway elongating, twisting beyond reason. She turned, heart racing, but the way back was gone. The hallway stretched endlessly behind her, swallowed by darkness. Her feet moved on their own, drawn forward. A small door appeared, white, cracked, almost glowing in the dark. She reached out, hand trembling. The door creaked open to reveal nothing. An empty room. But inside, a mirror. Lena stepped inside. Her reflection stared back. But the reflection smiled. And then, slowly, the reflection raised a hand and waved. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared into the mirror. Her reflection didn't mimic her movements. It lingered behind her eyes, cold, distant, and different. For a moment, she felt frozen, trapped between two realities. Then the reflection spoke, without moving its lips. A whisper in her mind, soft but clear. "You're already part of the story." Lena spun around, but the room was empty. Only the faint echo of footsteps behind her. She turned back to the mirror. The glass rippled like water, distorting the reflection. And then, it cracked, splitting her face into jagged fragments. A low, chilling laugh echoed from the empty hallway. She stumbled back from the mirror, breath shallow. The walls around her seemed to pulse, shadows twisting into shapes. The whispers returned, faster, louder. Voices of children. Voices of the lost. "Come play. Don't forget. He's waiting." Lena's fingers trembled on her recorder. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she felt the weight of unseen eyes on her back. A sudden cold breeze swept through the room, carrying a scent, earth, decay, and something metallic. The door slammed shut. She was trapped. The silent guest was here. And he wasn't alone. Lena's breath hitched as the voices grew louder, swirling around her like a thick fog. They whispered her name, soft, urgent, pleading. "Lena, help us." Her fingers gripped the recorder tightly, as if it might anchor her to reality. The air grew colder, and the shadows on the walls seemed to shift into tiny, blurred figures. She couldn't tell if they were real or a trick of the mind. A sudden, sharp crack echoed through the room. From the darkness, a small hand reached out, pale and trembling. Lena recoiled, but the hand grasped her wrist firmly. A child's voice whispered again. "Don't forget me." Lena tried to pull free, but the grip tightened, cold and unyielding. The whispers grew frantic, overlapping. "Remember. He is watching. You belong now." She felt a pressure in her mind, a force trying to erase her memories, her identity. Her vision blurred. She struggled to hold onto herself. "Stay with me," she whispered into the recorder. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision, the silent guest. Tall. Faceless. Arms reaching out. She blinked, and it was gone. But the cold remained. And so did the feeling. That she was no longer alone. Lena's mind wavered between clarity and fog. Faces blurred, names slipped away like sand through her fingers. She tried to focus, gripping the recorder tightly. The whispers carved grooves in her thoughts, trying to replace her memories with silence. A chilling certainty settled in her bones. She was becoming one of the forgotten. She saw flashes, a girl running through trees, a faceless figure standing still, a swing swaying in an empty clearing. And then, her own face. Only, it wasn't her anymore. It was a mask she couldn't remove. In the suffocating dark, the silent guest's voice echoed in her mind again. "You saw me. Now you belong." She felt a pull, an irresistible force dragging her toward the whisper tree. Her body moved against her will. Outside, the forest loomed, silent and watchful. The tree waited. And so did he. Lena's feet moved on their own, carrying her through the twisting corridors of the ruined school. The whispers grew louder with every step, urging her forward, deeper into the darkness. Outside, beyond the shattered windows, the forest seemed to lean closer, the branches reaching like long fingers, eager to touch her. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled the air, pulling at something buried deep inside her. She knew the whispered tree was near. She could feel it. Her heart hammered with a mixture of fear and inevitability. She whispered into her recorder, voice barely steady. "This is no longer about the story. It's about survival. And something ancient is waiting for me." At last, she stepped into the clearing. The whispered tree stood tall and pale, stark against the dark forest behind it. The broken swing hung still, its rope frayed and worn. The air was impossibly still. No birds sang. No wind stirred the leaves. Only silence. And in that silence, she sensed him. Behind the tree. Watching. Waiting. Lena's breath caught. She raised her camera and snapped a photo. Click. The flash lit the clearing. And for a fleeting moment, she saw those long arms stretch toward her. The flash of the camera faded, and the clearing fell back into shadow. Lena lowered the camera, heart pounding. There was no sign of movement now, only the whisper of leaves underfoot. But the feeling was unmistakable. He was there. Just out of sight. Watching her. Waiting for her to make the next move. Her recorder picked up a faint sound. A soft, rhythmic clicking. Like footsteps on gravel. Growing closer. Lena took a slow, deliberate step backward. Her breath was shallow, every muscle tense. The shadows around the tree thickened, folding in on themselves. The clicking stopped. A cold silence pressed in. Then, a hand. Long, pale, and featureless. Reached out from behind the tree. It hovered just inches from her face. Lena froze. Her mind screamed to run. But her body remained still. The silent guest had finally found her. The pale hand hovered, cold and still. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Her skin prickled, as if the air itself had frozen. Slowly, the hand reached forward. Then, just as her mind screamed run, it vanished. The clearing returned to silence. But Lena knew it hadn't left. The air buzzed with unseen energy. She raised her recorder, voice barely a whisper. "He's not here to hurt, not yet. He's here to claim." A wind stirred the branches above. The rope on the swing creaked gently. Lena stepped back toward the edge of the clearing. Her mind raced. There was a choice. To stay, to confront this ancient presence. Or to leave and never return. But as her heart pounded in the silence, she realized she already belonged. Lena stood at the edge of the clearing, the whispered tree looming behind her like a silent sentinel. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying a voice, soft, ancient, and full of promise. "Come with me." She felt a pull, gentle but irresistible. Her feet moved forward, crossing the boundary between the forest and the forgotten. Her recorder captured her whispered words. "I don't know what happens next. But I'm ready." The trees closed around her, swallowing the light. Shapes shifted just beyond her sight. Long limbs brushing the undergrowth. The silence was deeper here. A weight settled on her shoulders, both heavy and freeing. Behind her, the swing creaked once more, moving slowly in the still air. Lena's voice trembled as she spoke into the recorder. "He's no longer behind me. He's inside." The forest around Lena seemed to shift, the trees growing taller and darker, blotting out the sky. Her footsteps slowed as the ground beneath her feet grew soft, almost like walking on thick moss. The light around her was dim, hollow, as if the sun was leaking away somewhere far above the canopy. Whispers brushed against her ears, gentle but persistent. You cannot leave. Not now. Her breath came out in shallow clouds. She knew the stories were true. He was real. And he was patient. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the forest floor. Lena's pulse quickened as the day slipped toward night. Every sound was amplified. The crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves. Her recorder caught it all, the silent watching, the slow approach of something unseen. She reached the base of the whisper tree once more. The swing moved slowly, creaking a quiet farewell. A voice, neither male nor female, whispered directly into her mind. You belong to the silence now. The forest fell utterly still. Lena stood beneath the whisper tree, her breath shallow, every nerve alight with cold anticipation. The air around her thickened, pressing in like a weight of unseen hands. Her heart slowed, matching the slow, deliberate rhythm of the silence itself. Then, in that quiet, she felt it, a presence folding around her like a shadowed embrace. Not cruel, not angry. Just patient. Waiting. Lena's eyes closed. Her voice barely a whisper into the recorder. Maybe this is the end. Or maybe the beginning of something else. When she opened her eyes again, the clearing was empty. The whisper tree stood silent, the swing swaying gently. And in the mirror she'd carried with her, cracked but whole, her reflection stared back. But the eyes were empty. The forest seemed to close behind Lena, swallowing the trail she had taken. Each step forward was met with thick silence, the kind that presses deep into your bones. She felt